Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Today we're up to the last two lines of Yud Aleph Amud Beis. V'Rabbanon de Pligi Alei de Reb Shimon Manenu. Just a quick recap from yesterday's daf. The recap was there's a machloikis seems to be between Rabbanon and Reb Shimon whether you say Lev Bezdin Masna Alein. What do you do with the leftover karbanas tzibur, the leftover ketairos at the end of the year? You can't use it for the next year because you're not allowed to use ketairos or karbanas that was bought with the funds from the previous year for the next year. So Rabbi had a chiddush, and it seems like the chachamim hold, like Rabbi, he said in Rabbi Yochanan yesterday, that we have a concept, the Yisoid, that's called Lev Bezdin Masna Alein, that when they buy in the Beis HaMikdash at the beginning of the year all these karbanas with the tzibur, then Bezdin, it comes with a built-in condition from Bezdin that whatever is not going to end up being used for karbanas is not Kaddish B'Kedushas HaGuf, it's only Kaddish B'Kedushas Damim, and therefore you can be paid. So Reb Shimon doesn't hold like that. Gemara asks, Rabbanan de Pligi Alei de Reb Shimon Manenu. Who are the Chachamim that argue with Reb Shimon and say that we don't hold of, that we do hold of Lev Bezdin Masna Alein? They hold like Rabbi Yochanan. Gemara says, Inei me Rabbanan de Ketairos. If you're going to tell me that it's the Rabbanan of the Mishnah in Ketairos, by the Ketairos, right? We said that what do you do with the leftover Ketairos? You can be paid it. So if you see you can be paid the Ketairos, you can redeem the Ketairos, the leftover Ketairos at the end of the year. Must be, how can you redeem Ketairos? Ketairos is Kaddish B'Kedushas HaGuf. It has inherent Kedusha, it has physical, the object itself has Kedusha, even before it hits the Klisharis. So how could you be paid? It must be because Lev Bezdin Masna Alein. So you see, those are the Rabbanan that hold Lev Bezdin Masna Alein. That Mishnah says the Gemara, no, it's not a raya. Shani Ketairos, the loy bar reiyahi. Ketairos is different because you really have no other eitzah other than coming on to the Lev Bezdin Masna Alein. You can't let it pasture and wait until it gets a mum. Karbonis animals, you can have pasture in the fields until it gets a mum, and that's how you can be paid it. So when you could do that, we don't resort to Lev Bezdin Masna Alein. We only resort to this concept, this chiddush of Lev Bezdin Masna Alein when it's loy bar reiyahi. So maybe Ketairos is a unique exception. You don't have a raya from the Mishnah in Ketairos that's also the mechanism, that's also what we do with regular animals of karbanas tzibur.
You have an example that 2,000 years it didn't change its color, nothing.
Correct. It's interesting. We spoke about it on Shabbos, that they found the Ketairos in the Qumran. In the 1990s, they found a whole 900 pounds of spices in one of the caves in the Qumran where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found.
We cannot wait for Tisha B'Av.
Yeah.
For the big...
we're actually I'm working on it. Long story short, they found it, mamish, the color was vibrant. It could be it wasn't exposed to the sun, it was like in a cave and it was covered over, but the colors were vibrant, and when they burnt it a little bit, whether you're allowed to burn it or not is not our topic for tonight. It smelled mamish. They have miracle stories from the paleontologists that checked the Ketairos when it started effervescing in the middle of Oklahoma. They sent it to him in a jar, and he says he didn't even know it was the Ketairos. He said that mosquitoes, flies, and gnats, which are so common in the area that he's in, for 50, 100 feet outside, because it went through the vent, was clear, mamish clear. His clothes smelled for 3 months. He came home, his wife usually asks him to leave his coat outside the house because it smells from fumes and the chemicals in the laboratory. He came home that night. His wife said, I could smell something. What did you examine in the lab today? What did you do? She asked him, I spoke to both of them, I went to interview them. She asked him, take me to the lab. Take me to the lab. I want to smell it. It's unbelievable. They brought it to Chacham Ovadia, Rav Yosef. Nathan is here. And Rav Yosef told them, he had it checked by a frum paleontologist. It was confirmed it was the 11 spices of the Ketairos. Wow. He told them to replicate it, not exactly, a little bit different. Ovadia, you're not allowed to replicate the Ketairos exactly. Right. And he told them that it's important to replicate it with a little bit of a shinoi so that future generations can familiarize themselves with the smells of the past. When I went to interview that paleontologist, who's a complete guy, he's by the way Ben Noyach, he keeps Shavim Mitzvahs B'nai Noyach.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He told me that when he met Rabbi Yosef afterwards, he gave him this. He held on to this for over 30 years.
Are those the spices?
Those are the replicas from the spice of the Ketairis, not exact replicas, but he said that that Rabbi Yosef gave him two. Gave him a blessing, gave him two of these, and he gave me one.
Wow.
Yeah? Holding on to it. He says, I just want to give it to you because you'll be mafaris in the story. So it's going to come out, Mitzvah coming attractions.
What about the ratios?
Okay, we had an answer for that over Shabbos, yeah. So some people said to me, what do you mean if they found 900 pounds and they only prepared in advance for the year, right? Because they weren't allowed to use ketairos that were bought with funds from the previous year for the next year.
Okay.
So 900 pounds is a lot more than 368 mana, the amount that they prepared. So what was the purpose in preparing so much? The teretz is, we figured it out over Shabbos from yesterday's daf, that actually they could prepare as much as they want. It just couldn't be bought. Whatever the Beis HaMikdash bought had to be bought with the funds of that year. So they could prepare for the next 10 years and supply the Beis HaMikdash with whatever they needed for that year. If there was extra that was bought with the funds that came in that year, that couldn't be used for the next year. But Avada, they probably had in storage, a lot more.
This is a manufacturing facility?
It was a storage. It was a storage house. It was a storage house.
Figure out
And
because
Reb Shol said because the climate over there is perfect, by the Qumran and the Dead Sea.
There's no
Yeah.
moisture.
There's no moisture, so it stayed. Anyway, so Shani Ketairos, the Gemara here says, Shani Ketairos deloi bariyahi. The reason why Ketairos can be nivda, can be redeemed at the end of the year, even though it's Kaddish B'Kedusha Sagof, and Kedusha Sagof can't be nivda, we rely on Lev Bezin Masna because you can't pasture, you can't send it out to pasture and wait till it gets a mum. So it can't be the Rabbanon of Ketairos, Elo Rabbanon de Para. So it must be the Rabbanon by the Bryce of Paraduma we saw yesterday. Over there by Paraduma it says you can be Poida the Paraduma at any stage until the Shchita al Gabe Maracha. Right? So over here, how can you be Poida Paraduma? A Paraduma, L'chaira, is Kadosh Ikdusha Sagof. It's kind of interesting because the Gemara yesterday said it's Kache Bedekabayas. So why would we bring a raya from there? Okay, but either way, the Gemara asked this. I think they asked this kasha. What's the Gemara's kasha over here? Paradumas, anyways. Gemara said the Gemara established yesterday it's Kache Bedekabayas. It's not Kedusha Sagof. So how could you want to bring a raya from Paradum over here? So either way, Dil Shani Parad the Yakarin. The reason why you rely on Lev Bezin Masna land by Paradum is because it's very valuable. It's very expensive. If it's very expensive, they make an exception. But you don't have a raya from the fact that Ketairos can be redeemed. Hagametz Kedusha Sagof. From the fact that Paraduma can be redeemed. Hagametz Kedusha Sagof. That Karbonas could also be redeemed. Karbonas are not so expensive. Animals are not so expensive. And there are Bariyah, they can get a mum, you can let it pasture. Ve'ela Rabbanon the Omru Loi. So this is the Rabbanon in the first Mishnah, Shevuos, our Mishnah. Just a quick recap again. There was a conversation between the Chachamim and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Chacham asked Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, what happens if you have a Soirish Chodesh that got lost? You found it before Pesach. Could you use that Soirish Chodesh for the Soir Regalim for Pesach? And Reb Shimon said yes. So they asked him, how? What do you mean? The Soirish Chodesh is designated for one kapara, a type of kapara for Tarsha Achol Satame. The Soir Regalim is designated for a different type of kapara, for a kapara of Tamas Migdash Vekadashav where there's no Yediyah B'tchila, no Yediyah B'Saif. How could you switch it around and use it for the Soir Regalim? So there he said, what did he say? He said, no, it's all in the same, under the same umbrella, so you could do it. So the Gemara says, Mimayd Rabbi Yehudahi. How do you know that the Chachamim in that Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda? V'hachi ka'amar lei. And this is what Rabbi Yehuda said. Bishlam l'dida min lev bezn masna lei nam tulachi yikrivu. According to me, I don't have a kasha myself because I hold lev bezn masna lei, and so it's okay to switch it around. Because there was a Tanai from Bezin in the beginning of the year that whatever doesn't end up being used with the intention that, or the purpose that it was designated for, then you can use it for something else, no problem. Because Lev Bezin Masna, that was the Tanai. Ella didach da amar lo, you don't hold the svar of Lev Bezin Masna, le mama yikrivu. Why should you be able to be makriv the Sorish Chodesh for the Sorah as the Sorah Regalim? So the Gemara says, who told you it's Rabbi Yehuda? Who argues? Dil Rabbi Meiri, maybe the Chachamim over there who are asking on Reb Shimon, they're not Rabbi Yehuda, and Mamela you have to come out to Lev Bezin Masna. Maybe it's Rabbi Meir, V'achika Amalei, Bishloim L'Dadida Mina Kalasirim Kaparas and Shava Mishem Hacha Yikrivu. According to me, I hold you can use any soyer for any aveir, no problem. It's Kaparas and Shava. El Didacha Ma Yikrivu, but according to you, why should you be makravit? It's two different kaparas. So again, you don't have a raya that the Chachamim who hold of Lev Bezin Masna Lein are the Chachamim of our Mishnah. So Elu Rabbi Yochanan says the Gemara Gomer La Divrei Reb Shimon Nivdin, Divrei Chachamim Nivdin. Rabbi Yochanan had a Messiah from his Rebbe. The Messiah said that according to the Chachamim, they are Nivdin because Lev Bezin Masna Lein. According to Reb Shimon, it's not Nivdin, it's a Messiah. Now the Gemara asks, and this is what we said yesterday already, Elu Reb Shimon de Leslie Lev Bezin Masna Lein, my Avdan Lahu. According to Reb Shimon, that doesn't hold of the Svara Lev Bezin Masna Lein, what are you going to do with the leftover karbonis? Right? You have leftover karbonis. What are you going to do with it? You can't use it for the next year because it was bought with the funds from the previous year. So what are you going to do with the leftover karbonis tzibor that you have roaming around at the end of the year and they're kaddish b'kedusha saguf? You can't be paid it. You can't be paid it either. It's kaddish saguf cannot be nifta. So what are you going to do with the leftover karbonis according to Reb Shimon? So here we come to another memro of Rabbi Yochanan. Omer Rabbi Yitzchak, Omer Rabbi Yochanan, makitzen behenes hamizbeach. What does makitzen behenes hamizbeach mean? Makitzen behenes hamizbeach means mekaitzen behenes hamizbeach. So Rashi says that when the mizbeach stood still, it was empty. Nobody was makriv anymore, right? We didn't want the mizbeach to stay karbonis free. We don't want to have a karbonis free mizbeach. So they would bring nadavas, right? If let's say there was no more lines, people waiting with their animals for their chatois, their ashamis, and the karbonis chayva. So then you would bring karbonis nedava onto the mizbeach, and that would be called kayetz hamizbeach. It's like the dessert of the mizbeach. That's what it's called. Ooh, wow, what is this?
Zegt goat.
For Korban Pesach?
Gewoon, for Pesach. My family every year.
No way.
That's in my parents' house.
No way.
I mean, have a Morocco.
Hold on, can you send it to... Look, this is amazing. Let's show it to the Oilam. Yo. That's amazing.
Moroccan, no.
Ma, it's a...
Moroccan. You didn't know?
They're skinning here. They're skinning the... Can you see?
Goat beef jerky for the next
I'm gonna send it to him.
I'll put it up.
It's crazy. One second. This is... For what purposes? Oh, they're just shechting stam.
Every year it's a Pesach we shecht. My parents shecht.
Shecht because they don't want to buy...
No,
They don't mishzich with meat or...
Minag. It's a minag year from the grandfather.
And what do you do with the meat? What do you eat?
אוכלים אותו, זה פסח.
But you
אבל
can't...
הם לא אוכלים קורבן, הם לא אוכלים קורבן פסח. זה
Wow.
In my neighborhood also, in my neighborhood, each Moroccan family, they used to bring a sheep living in their house.
No way.
telling you, נו, היינו גרים בבתים על הקרקע. אז כל אחד Moroccan family היה the sheep.
Wow.
כל הזמן ככה.
Wow.
My nephew
איזה צדיקים. Love it. Okay.
אנחנו ברברים.
ככה זה, we're bringing Pesach to life.
You see where the seat on the barbecue already.
אנחנו...
He knows where it's gonna be.
That's amazing. Oh, Di Shama V'Yorei Yehuda. Pesach! Gewaldig. Here, pull over a chair,
Live stream.
So, come right there, Pesach. Anyway, Rabbi Yochanan says, when you have leftover animals at the end of the year, that you really designated originally for those animals to come as karbonas choiva, like you just saw, on Yoel's phone, Korban Pesach as a Korban choiva, let's say, yeah? So you have these karbonas tzibur, interestingly, because Pesach a Korban tzibur or Korban yachid, by the way. Pesach is the only Korban that's really unique, that has a Toiras Korban tzibur. Why is it Korban tzibur? Because it had the groups, right? But it also had a Korban yachid. If you weren't nimna on the Korban, on the Pesach, then you couldn't take part of it. So it had both elements, interestingly enough. But anyway, the Beis HaMikdash bought Karbonas tzibur, whoever the supplier was made a lot of money. They bought a lot of animals for the year, right? Just 730 animals just for the Tamidin Shal Shachar, Tamidin Shal Ben Arabayim, I believe, right? 365 times 2. Nobody embarrassed me over here. Am I right over here? Yeah. Okay. So you had just that alone, but you always had extra. We always had extra. So what did you do with the extra? So Reb Shimon says the extra you brought b'toiras nedava, and you used it as kayetz mizbeach, right? You fed the mizbeach, so to speak, dessert. Okay, that's what it is. Omer Reb Shmuel bar Yitzchak Moed Reb Shimon b'seirei chatos she'ein mikaytzen begufan elo b'dmeyin. If it's a soil oilam, then what? Then you bring it from choiva to nedava. Nedava is also an oila. It's the same family, right? It's the same shem. Oila to oila. Before it was a choiva, now you don't need it for choiva anymore, so you bring it as a nedava. But if the original status of the animal, of the carbon tzibur, was a chatas, so what are you going to bring as a nedava? Right? You can't bring a chatas as a nedava. It has to become an oila. So here, he says you can't bring that animal itself. He's moida b'si'irei chatas she'ein mekayetzin begufan elo b'dmeyin, which means that you have to sell it, right? You paid it, after it becomes a balmum, you paid it, and then you'd use that money to buy an oila, another carbon, as an oila and a dava for the mizbeach. So the Gemara says, why? Because hachu the mikar oila v'ashta oila, v'has the mikar chatz v'ashta oila, before, by the keves, right, you have the sheep, the leftover sheep that was originally designated to become an oila, a tamid, a carbon tamid, and it was left over. So now you can be makravit as a carbon adova as long as it stays an oila. But over here, mikar chatas v'ashta oila, that we don't say. You're not allowed to be makravit as an oila if it's originally a chatas. Why? Gzeira la'acha kapara otu l'fnei kapara. It's a gzeira. What's the gzeira? The gzeira is that a person might do that even lefnei kapara. Person is going to say this carbon should be a carbon chatas. Then he's going to decide to bring it as an oila, and it's not kosher oila because it's still royal the karav chatas. So we're afraid that a person is going to come to do that, switch the status of his behema even before the kapara, and so gzeir la'achar kapara atul lefnei kapara. Achar kapara means it was lost. You brought another animal, so now you already had a kapara of the chatas. So now this animal that was originally supposed to be a chatas, you bring as an oila. That you could do, but it's a gzeirli la'achar kapara otu v'nei kapara. Omer Abaye fanan avninu, but parvesor shel kipurim she'avdu v'hifresh. Acherim tachteim, the case of parvesor of Yom Kippur that got lost, and you had to bring another parvesor instead. V'chinsi Rabbi Dezar she'avdu v'hifresh acherim tachteim kulon yamusu. You have to let him die. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Lozer b'Shimon Oimrim Yirat Shistava v'Yamachru v'Yiplod Mein Lanadava. Shein chatas tzibur mesa. So what do? You have to wait till it comes a balmum, and then you sell it, and then you buy new karbonis nedava. Why do you have to do that? V'mai nikra v'inu gufayu oila. Let's bring that parvasar itself as an oila. The teretz is elalav shma mena. You see, right? Gzer la'achapar tefnei. You can't do that. Can't bring a chatos tzibur, a carbon that was originally a chatos. You can't be makriv it as a oila for an adova otu lefnei kapara. אי אפשר להביא את זה לאוילה. כן. מכיוון שזה היה מיוחד לחטוס, then you're not allowed to bring it as an oila. Technically you are, but it's a gzeira lefnei kapara that a person is going to come to do that even lefnei kapara. Yes. Chatas tzibur that you're afraid.
Chatas tzibur, we're afraid that the yachid is going to come and use it for ola. For tzibur to use ola, it's not a problem.
No, even for tzibur. Even for tzibur. Yeah, even for tzibur.
Why not? It's
because we're
tzibur to tzibur. It's kedusha ola.
Because we're afraid. Because we're afraid that that a person is going to do that. They're going to do it even before the kapara. Take a look at the Gemara. We're afraid that they're going to do that even before the kapara happened, before they're makar of the chatos. They're just going to take the chatos and be makar of the shamayla. It says the same halach over there by the Shnei Seirim Shnei Kippurim. It's a Mishnah and Yuma, right? What happens if a Kohen Gadol had two Seirim on Yom Kippur, right? So one is Sar Lazazel, one is Sar LaShem. And then the Sar Lazazel dropped dead before you could take it to the Azazel. Had a panic attack. It knew that the Kohen knew it's going to be taken and thrown off a cliff. And a heart attack, and it just dropped dead. So now, you can't just replace it with another Sar. can't just bring another soyer and say, oh, this is for the Azazel.
Because
Because it has to be a goyrel. So you have to bring another 2 seirim, and you have to do another goyrel. But now, what are you going to end up with? You're going to end up with 2 seirim la Hashem and 1 soyer la Azazel. So the Mishnah says, what do you do with the second soyer la Hashem? What are you going to do? Now you have 2 soyer la Hashems. So Hasheni yira achi yistavi yemachar v'ibla. So you have to let it get a balmum, become balmum, and then you sell it and you buy with that money a korban nedava that you're makriv as an oila for the tzibur. Okay. Gemara says, V'amai? Why do you have to do that? Yikrav ihu gufei oila. Why do you have to wait till it gets a balmum? Becomes a balmum, the second soyer. And you buy another one, let them take this very soyer la Hashem, the second soyer la Hashem, and be makriv as an oila. And Allah Shema, no, you don't do that. Why? Because that was a chatas, right? It was originally a chatas. You can't take the chatas itself and be makriv as an oila, because gzeira acha kapara otu lefnei kapara. Because we're afraid that a person is going to come to do it. One second, we're afraid he's going to come to do it even before there was a kapara for the tzibur, kapara chatas for the tzibur. We're afraid they're going to take mamish this chatas and bring it as an oila. We don't want to do that. That's mamish asur. Yeah, what are you saying, Rabshol?
He says here, bring the ritva here, one of the
כן, מה הריטב"א אומר?
שאי אפשר להפוך זבח לזבח אחר.
בדיוק.
זהו.
You can't take.
חטס או מגדול, לא משנה, יחיד, ציבור, לא משנה מה. למה זה חטס, לא יכול להיות משהו אחר.
Okay, very beautiful. Nice lashon. The ריטב"א says that?
שאי אפשר להפוך
יפה
זבח
מאוד.
לזבח אחר.
יפה מאוד. אומר רבינו, נוח הראיה.
bring פסחים עמוד ג' עין ג' עמוד ב'.
Beautiful. אף הננה מתנין, another Mishnah Tamura. Osham shemesa ba'olov, sheneskaper ba'olov, a carbon osham. The owner died or already was neskaper with a different carbon. You have to let it, yirat shestav, you have to let it pasture until it gets a balmum. Becomes a balmum, v'yemachav, people have an adava. And then you sell it, and then you buy a carbon adava with that money. Rabbi Lezer, Amiyomos, it should die. It's halach l'bashim Sinai. Rabbi Yeshua, Aimer, Yavi b'dam of oilam. You can bring an oilas yachid. Gemara says, "V'likr hagufa oila." Why do you have to wait till you sell it and you buy another one? Let them take that carbon itself and bring an oila. Lav gzeda kapara. I'll take kapara. Shmami no. You see, you don't do that. Tainam hachim ma'in mevirim and amesaris. Another raya. What do you bring from the mesaris? Kayitz kivnois shuach. Kivnois shuach. What are bnois shuach? Bnois shuach are white figs. What is that? Yeah. They're delicious fruits, right? Delicious dessert.
White figs.
Yeah. Tosfos says that actually there's an opinion that the Eitz Hadas was B'nai Shuach. And that's why it's called B'nai Shuach. It's like Tosfos brings a medrash. Huh?
Because they cover themselves with leaves.
Because shucha means a pit. That's what led to Misa.
Wow.
There's some call it B'nai Sheva. There's Zayin Me'avelis. That's what led to Misa, so that's what's called B'nai Shuach. Interesting.
I thought they covered themselves with fig leaves.
Yeah.
That's what
That's how you know that it was made from.
that's the opinion. Why they think it was from the.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so what kind of figs? They call it B'nai Shuach. There are different types of figs. So this was the figs.
White figs.
White figs, yes. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? It says you're not allowed to bring Peiros Elon onto the Mizbeach. So how can you say Kibnoi Shuach LeMizbeach? You're not allowed to bring Peiros Elon. The Gemara says, it means that whatever Bnoi Shuach is to a person, so to these animals, these extra animals, the Nidvas Oila, the Nidavis, are for the Mizbeach. It's very interesting how the Gemara compares, right? The table of a person to the Mizbeach, Mamish. Our dessert to the Mizbeach's dessert. That's why a person is eating, right? Tzaddikim eat.
They have salt on the table.
Mamish. You have to have salt on the table, very good.
Also, the table has to have four. The table, I think they say, shouldn't have 4 legs, only 2. Because in this bed, I think, usually, I think 4. I'm trying to remember.
Wow.
They only have 2, not 4 legs. On the table.
Really?
Yeah, right.
Meaning 2 like legs, the way we have, people have. Why is that? Also related to the Mizbeach. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So the Gemara says, okay, let's just finish up over here because I have something very deep. I think we're gonna enter a little bit Kaballah tonight, but let's just get to that line of the Gemara. Dorish Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda. Ein makitzen ba'oila sa'oif. You're not allowed to take money that you bought, that when you sell the oilas behema, that you couldn't be makav them as beyach. You can't replace it and buy oilas ha'oif. You don't buy oilas ha'oif. Amar Rava, so Rava says, ha burcha. How does he translate burcha in English?
Fabrication.
This is a fabrication. This is you made stuff up.
Fake
Bekitzer.
news.
Fake.
Best translation.
Love it. Fake
Arthur needs
news.
to reprint just to have that.
Oh my Rava, ho burcha. It's fake news. Omer le Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak le Rava. My burcha. What is fake news? Anom riten alei mishmeit Rav Simon ben Ardo riten alei. I told Rava to the name of Rav Simon ben Ardo. I heard him say the Omer Rav Simon ben Ardo. Moisrois le nidvas tibur azli ve'ein oilas oiv betzibur. Since the moisrois, the extra animals, whatever you're not going to use for its intended purpose, has to come as an oilas nedava, and we know that a nidvas tibur cannot come with an oif. An oilas tibur cannot come with an oif. So mainly you can't buy oifas with it. It's mamish poshet. V'av Shmuel so the Rebbe Shmuel karbonas tibur sakin mishchosan lama shehen. Now he says Reb Shmuel also holds like Rabbi Yochanan, and going back to the original memory of Rabbi Yochanan Namad Aleph, that Rabbi Yochanan said according to Reb Shimon, what did you do with the leftover karbonis that you didn't use for the carbon tamid? What did you do with it? You know what you did with it? You bought, you basically were makrivit l'shem oila. So Rav Yudah Mishmul said, like Rabbi Yochanan, karbonis tzibur sakin meshachta lama shehen. That the knife of the shchita pulls that animal to whatever carbon it's shechted for in the moment.
From the beginning.
Yeah, in other words, from the beginning.
Whatever it was meant to.
Right. It's as if it was hufresh metchilu lakach, Rashi says. Interesting. Now, it's very interesting. Shmuel,
Even though it's not from auto korban, it's off. Even it's not from auto korban. As הוא אומר, even though, these korbanot tzibur that were left, they are slaughtered by themselves, like the same korban that they're hukdash for the tchila.
Right.
Even though it's not the korban aras.
So basically, what it means is, Reb Shaul, the Rishonim speak out Tosfos, Rashba, and the Ritva. See over here on the bottom, they speak out that basically the karbonis are tluyim, like they're in limbo, and until the sakin touches them, until you're actually shechting the carbon, up until that point, it's undecided whether the carbon is a carbon tamid, which was originally intended to be brought as a tamid shachar tamid ben rabayim, but now that it's left over, so the sakin is going to, so to speak, decide that it's a carbon oila at the moment of shchita.
זה קיץ כזה, זה קינוח.
Right. Right.
זה קינוח למזבח, בקיצור. זה מתנה למזבח. קינוח למזבח.
Correct. So he's saying it should already be mishas smicha?
Yes, from before.
There's not for tzibur, yeah?
That's not his lashon though. His lashon is sakin. Oh, it's tzibur. Yeah, karbonas tzibur. Yeah.
And they take an animal,
Right.
whenever they need an animal.
The only karbonas tzibur that have smicha really is the soyer and Yom Kippur. The seir and Yom Kippur. Okay, but either way, the lashon is sakin mishchat l'mashehen. What's really interesting is, I want to show you a Tosfos in Menachos. Pull up the Tosfos in Menachos, the lashon Tosfos over here. This is very a very inspiring Tosfos. תראה פה את הלושן הטויסוס. רבינו קלוינמוס, עובב של רב משולם, הגיע כלושן שני בש"ס פטירוסוי. Before he passed away, he was Magia. There's a Gemara Menachos Kaftes, that's a different Gemara. He made a Hagah in the Gemara. Ushloisha Devar Magia kemipi nevuah b'shas p'tirasei. There are three areas in Shas that this Baal Tosfos, Rabbeinu Kloinimus, was Magia b'shas p'tirasei. And one of the things he was Magia is our Gemara, this line of the Gemara. It says, our Gemara was Sheikasa b'sforim l'mashahu v'omar de garsina l'mashahen. That sakin meshachton l'mashahen. So in old Gersois, the word was l'mashahu, but it made no sense. And Rabbeinu Kloinimus, the father of Meshulam, b'shas he passed away. It's incredible Tosfos. B'shas p'tirasai. On his deathbed, he said, bring me the Gemara, bring me the manuscripts. He made a Hagah in the Gemara. And he was Magia our Gemara. One of the three places was Magia b'shas p'tirasai was our Gemara. Instead of l'mashu, he should be Geras Mashan. If you take a look at the Chazon Ish, the Hakdama to Erechaim, he starts off a sefer with a bunch of Ma'ar Mekaymis that inspire Amal HaTorah, that inspire you to learn Torah. And one of the places that the Chazon Ish mentions in the Hakdama to Orach Chaim is this Tosfos. Chazon Ish is saying that imagine that a Baal Tosfos, on his deathbed, what is he busy with? He's busy with being Magia, a word that we're learning about tonight. A word of, instead of Lamashahu, Lamashahen. That's what he's busy with. Incredible. Now, what's super interesting is Lashon HaTosfos is Kemipi Nevuah B'Shas Petirasa. It's a very interesting expression. What does it mean, Kemipi Nevuah? What does it mean, Kemipi Nevuah? So there's a very, very interesting Kesef Mishnah in Hilchas Tumas Tzeras, Perik Beis in the Rambam. There's a famous Gemara about Metzia Peivav, you for sure know it, where the Gemara talks about the story of Rabbi Bar Nachmani and the way he passed away. There was a big machloikas and shamayim, whether the Beheres is Kodma l'Seir, Seir is Kodma l'Beheres. There's a suffix whether the Beheres came first and then the Seir Lovan came, or the Seir Lovan came first and then the Beheres. It depends if you're Tar and Tomei. If the Beheres came first and then the Seir Lovan came, then that's Tomei. If it's a suffix. The question is, we don't know. Is he Tar or Tomei? That's the Shaila. It's big machloikas and Pamalia Shalmala. The Rebbeinu Shalom said Tar, and they said Tomei. The kids are loiba shamayim. They didn't want to accept the psak of Hashem. Yeah, one of those Gemaras. And then they said, there's nobody who is a bigger master in Hilchas, Negoim, and Olis than Rabbi Bar Nachmani. Let's go ask Rabbi Bar Nachmani. And at that point, Rabbi Bar Nachmani, the Gemara tells us about Metzia Peivav, Rabbi Bar Nachmani, he mamish was on the verge of passing away, and B'Shas Petirasai, he said the words Tohor. He paskin Tohor. That it's a suffix if the Seir came before the Beheres, the Beheres came before the Seir, he said Tohor. And Kach Yotzas Nishmasoi B'Tahara. Mamish, as he said the word Tohor, that's how he passed away. That's Rabbi Bar Nachmani, the incredible passing of Rabbi Bar Nachmani in Bamatzia Peivav. So the Shaila is, how do you paskin? So on the one hand, you say Loi B'Shamayim. Hashem said Tohor, but it's Loi B'Shamayim. But on the other hand, Rabbi Bar Nachmani said Tohor as he passed away. Yeah? Rabbi Bar Nachmani said Tohor. Comes the Rambam says Tomei. Because the Mishnah says, what do you mean Tomei? Rabbi Bar Nachmani. He was the expert in the Gam and Olis. They said, let's ask him. He was able to utter B'Shas Petirasoi. What did he say, B'Shas Petirasoi? Tar. So why is the Rambam paskin Tomei? Yeah? It's not Bashamayim, he said it. Right? The Barzchias, in a Trubah to the Chasam Sofer, like Chasam Sofer had a back and forth, Barzchias, he brings this Kesef Mishnah. And the Kesef Mishnah answers as follows. Take a look at the Lashon Kesef Mishnah. Kesef Mishnah says, in Hilchas Tumas Tzeras, Perik Beis, he says, Yesh Shloimar, the Kivan the B'Shas Yitzias Neshama Omar Hachi, Hava Bechlal Loi Bashamayimi. Rabbi Bar Nachmani said it. When did Rabbi Bar Nachmani say Tahir? He said it B'Shas Yitzias Neshama. If he said it B'Shas Yitzias Neshama, that's considered Loi Bashamayim. So go back to the first Ma'ar Malkum in Tosfos. Tosfos says, it's Kemepi Nevuah B'Shas Petirasai. A tzaddik that utters Torah, that speaks and learning on the day of his Petira, you should know it has a level of Loi Bashamayim. Before a person passes away, a couple of weeks, a couple of months before, let's say a person lived 70 years. Yeah? He's lived his lifetime is 70 years. So 70 days before he passes away, then a little of his neshama leaves his body. Starts leaving a little bit at a time. 1 day per year. Yom Keneged Shana. And it comes out that B'Shas Petirasai, it's an unbelievable idea that B'Shas Petirasai, Chaim HaKadosh says differently. He says, I can't find it inside right now as I'm speaking. No, it says differently. He says a person's neshama is divided into days. So let's say a person lives. How many days does a person live? I think I once did the cheshbon. 80 years is how many days? I think it's like 30,000. Is it 30,000 days? Does that make sense? Anybody? Yeah, it's around 30,000 days. It's like mamish nothing. Yeah, mamish 30,000 days, right? So he says the neshama is divided into 30,000 pieces. Yeah, each day has a chelik, a unique chelik of the neshama that keeps you alive. And by the end of the day, right, biyodcha afked ruchi, that piece of the neshama goes up to Shemayim, and it's locked in. And then you get another piece of your neshama. The schalkus of the neshama brings to the Arizal that the neshama is divided based on the amount of days a person lives in this world, and each day you get another chelik of your neshama that keeps you alive. And then what you have to do on that day, you have to make sure to be mashlim yourself, to take that piece, work that piece, mamish, l'shem shamayim, whatever you're doing, make sure to elevate that piece of neshama that you have, and that goes up to shamayim, that Rizal says, and then it's stored away. Okay, what if a person, didn't use his chelik of the neshama that day appropriately, didn't use it properly? So before he passes away, Hashem gives him back the ganze neshama. The ganze neshama. That's why you see sometimes people, before they pass away, they get a new wind of life. You ever see that? They get a second wind. It's like the ner comes back all of a sudden. Right away he passes away. Guess what? What's the pshat? Harizal says, you know what the pshat is? The pshat is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you one last chance to take all of the chalokim of your neshama that you had scattered throughout your days, and he puts it into you to do one last tshuva before you come back. And that's why a person can sometimes get a second wind, and doctors say, "Oh, mom, she's coming back." No. It's that. There's a saidus over here, right? You get that neshama back. So b'shas b'tirasai, this is atushtal to the Arizal. Why is b'shas b'tirasai mamish considered Torah bashamayim? It's considered k'mepi nevuah. The answer is because b'shas b'tirasai is the only time in your life where you're operating on a full-blown soul. You have all the chalokim from your entire life that are scattered throughout all the days, charge into your body, and whatever hasagas you achieve in that moment is hasagas that you cannot achieve. A normal person throughout his life can't achieve those hasagas, and that's why Tosfos calls it k'mepi nevuah. And that's why the Kesef Mishnah says that it's Torah b'shamayim, and even though Rabbi Bar Nachmani uttered the word Tahar like Hashem, the halacha is tameh. You can't even rely on that, because that is coming from a very, very high place. It's considered Torah b'shamayim. That is what the Archaim HaKadosh Mordei Gezach. We're going to just finish quickly.
Rabbi has a Torah that's similar to this. He talks about Elisha and Elisha. Is Eliyahu and Elisha? Or is Eliyahu and Elisha?
Okay.
Right? And he says that when it was Elisha and Elisha, because when you see his tzaddik pass away, his ruach from down here is connected with his ruach from upstairs. If you're connected with his tzaddik from when you watch him pass away, and your ruach is connected with his ruach, then your ruach goes up with him, but you're still operating here. That's why.
But they didn't pass away.
What? No, Elisha and Elisha. Elisha. So Elisha passed away, right?
So they still have a ruach that's operating.
Still have a ruach, right? And then he had double the power.
Wow.
Right? He stopped with the Jordan, right? He stopped with the Yarden.
Wow. I'm not familiar with the story.
No, it was Eliyahu and Elisha.
Elisha saw Eliyahu go up.
Elisha saw Eliyahu go up, so he saw him go up in the Merkava, right? And then Elisha grabbed the staff from Eliyahu, and he was able to stop up the Jordan, which indicated that he had twice the powers that Eliyahu had, because his ruach was operating from the level of Shemayim while he was still down here on earth.
Wow. Okay, so it's a similar concept. Yeah, very similar. Yeah. Okay. Zug the Gemara weiter, just finish up to the two dots. Valzodoin tumas. 1 second. Tanya namahachi. Moed Reb Shimon besor shem leikarev beregel yikarev beresh chodesh ve'em loy korav beresh chodesh yikarev b'mekapur ve'leikarev b'mekapur yikarev beregel ve'leikarev beregel zeh yikarev beregel acher shemetchilos yilabay l'chaper al mizbeach achitzoin. So you see, Reb Shimon has no problem with taking a carbon that was designated for one kind of oila and bringing it for another kind of oila. Similar, one kind of chatas to another kind of chatas. He has no problem with that. Valzodin tumas migdosh v'kedosha v'sar nas b'fnim. Asks the Gemara, Manoah Namili, how do I know that the sor apnim is mechaper even for zdoinus? The tanu rabbanon v'chipra lakoydim v'tumas b'nei Yisrael u'mipish'eyem l'chol chatoisam. Pshoim elo hameradim. V'chein oimer melech moav pashabi v'oimer os tifsha livna be'esahi in chatois elo hashgogos v'chein oimer nefesh kisechta b'shgogo. I just want to end off. The Gemara says, how do I know that the Surah Pnimi of Yom Kippurim is mechaper on somebody who did it b'mezid, somebody on zdoinah, somebody who went into the Beis Hamikdash b'mezid b'tumah. He wants the tshuva right now. So how do I know that the Surah Hashem is mechaper on that? Because it says in the Torah, Pish'ayim. And Pish'ayim is mezid. So Eil HaMeradim is to rebel. Yeah. By the way, I always thought, I don't have a teretz to this. I always thought there's a difference between a pesheya and a mezid. Here, the Gemara equates the two. The Gemara says, how do I know that it's mechaper on somebody who walks into the Beis Hamikdash b'tumah b'mezid? Because it says that the chipra al-kodesh mipishayim, and pshayim is b'mezid. Yeah, it's mered. I always thought there's a difference. I always thought mezid means a guy knowingly is doing it. He mamish knows he's doing it intentionally. A pshia I thought is negligent. I could have avoided it. It's not like I did it with, there's a whole sugya about matziyah tchilasiv v'pshia v'sefer ba'inus. Like I was negligent in my shmira. It's not that I intended had full-blown intention to do it. It was more of like, okay, you know what, I could have avoided it. I could have been more careful. But it's not, I thought there are different levels. Okay, but this Gemara sounds like they're the same thing. Just one pasuk that David HaMelech says, we'll finish with this, it says, Chatois nu'urai pshai al tizkar. He says, Hashem, please don't forget, forget my averis, my chatois nu'urai upshai. So Ben Yoin and other Rishonim say, what about the pshoim of your younger years? He only is asking on the chatois nu'urai. And then the pshoim means for the rest of my life, the pshoim. But what about the pshoim of the nu'urai? He's only asked chatois, what about the mezid? So he says, when a person is young, okay, this is a big loophole, it's all a chatos. It's all a shaygig. Because we don't have the awareness and the consciousness to realize what our actions mean, the consequence of our actions. So David HaMelech is revealing a big secret over here. He's saying, as far as Nu'urai is concerned, as far as whatever I did when I was younger, it's all chatois. Those are chatois. Chatois Nu'urai. Once I gained an awareness and I knew better and I didn't apply myself, already that's pshai. That's not Nu'urai anymore. So it's interesting to know how David HaMelech categorizes, the younger years. A lot of times people can get desperate, like, oh my gosh, I wasted my life. I see Rakiva 40 years. No, chatois Nu'urai. When you're young, it's all chatois. Don't tell it over to guys under 40, but I'm saying it's it's chatois.
Okay,
shkayach, we'll see you tomorrow, yeah?